I was homeless on my 18th birthday, and my own cousins made sure of it. The check in my hand was thinner than the birthday card I never got. 18 years old. That's what I was that Tuesday morning. 18, and sitting in a lawyer's office that smelled like old coffee and older paper. 18, and holding a piece of my dead aunt's estate that wouldn't cover 2 months of rent in a town I couldn't afford to move to. My name is Hazel Whitaker. Until that morning, I thought I had no one. I grew up in the foster system. For different homes, 12 years of being someone else's paperwork. And the whole time, there was a woman I'd never met, in a town I'd never heard of, writing me letters I'd never receive. Waiting for me, loving me. I didn't know it yet. But I was about to find out. I was about to find out that my 2 older cousins, the ones who cleaned out that estate before I ever saw a dime, had been stealing from me my entire life. And I don't mean money. I mean something worse. Something you cannot get back. And I was about to find out that the small brass key the lawyer slid across his desk that morning, tied to a faded red tag, with the number 142 stamped on it, was worth more than every dollar those women took. Because it opened a door, and behind that door, my real life was waiting. The lawyer's name was Thaddeus Grant. He looked like his name. Old, careful, wearing a tie that probably cost more than everything I owned. He didn't smile when I walked in. He didn't stand up. He just gestured to the chair across from his desk like I was a client he'd been forced to see. Which, in a way, I was. Miss Whitaker. Yes, sir. Please. Sit. I sat. My backpack thumped against the leg of the chair. Everything I owned was in that backpack. 2 pairs of jeans. For shirts. A toothbrush. A photograph of my mother I'd carried since I was 6. And $283 in tips from the diner where I'd worked weekends for the last year. That was it. That was my whole life. 18 years, and it fit in one bag. Mr. Grant opened a file, slid a piece of paper toward me. This is what remains of your aunt's estate. I looked down. The number was small. Smaller than small. Insulting. I didn't say anything. I'd learned young that reacting in rooms like this only makes things worse. Grown-ups don't like it when foster kids have feelings. So I sat there, face blank, heart pounding. Your Aunt Adeline had significant medical debts in her final years, Mr. Grant said. Cardiac issues. Long-term care. It ate through most of what she had. Your cousins, Marlene and Sloane, were named executors. They settled the debts. This is the remainder of your share. Cousins. The word landed strange in my chest. I hadn't known I had cousins. I hadn't known I had an aunt. 12 years in the system, and no one ever told me I had family. No one ever called. No one ever came. Sir. My voice sounded small. I hated that. I didn't know she existed. Mr. Grant looked at me for the first time. Really looked. And something in his face shifted. Just a flicker. Like a man who had been paid to keep a secret and was starting to wonder if it was worth the money. I know, he said quietly. Because he did know. He had known the whole time. I felt the anger start. Low and hot. In my stomach. Miss Whitaker, there's something else. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a small brass key, attached to a faded red plastic tag, the number 142 stamped into it in worn black digits. He set it on the desk between us. Careful, like it might break. Your aunt was very specific about this. It was not to be included in the estate. It was not to be touched by anyone but you. She protected it in a separate trust when you were 6 years old. 6 years old. Which was when my mother died. I stared at the key, stared at the little red tag. My heart was doing something strange. Not pounding anymore. Just slow, like it was listening. What is it? It's the key to her business. A soda fountain. In a town called Ashford Hollow. A soda fountain. Yes. In Ashford Hollow. Yes. I almost laughed. I didn't know if it was a real laugh or the other kind. The kind that means you're about to lose it. Because a soda fountain. In some town I'd never heard of. Left to me by an aunt I never met. On the same day I got a check for less than my monthly bus pass. It sounded like a joke. A cruel one. From a universe that had already made a hobby out of laughing at me. And this. Mr. Grant slid a business card across the desk. Smooth. Glossy. Expensive. This is Damien Cole. Ridgeline Development. They have offered a substantial amount for the property. Your cousins have already accepted on their end. They're waiting for your signature. I looked at the card. Then I looked at the key. The card was thin. The key was heavy. I don't know how to explain what happened next. It wasn't a decision. It was more like, my hand knew before I did. I picked up the key, left the card, stood up. Mr. Grant blinked. For a second, he looked almost impressed, like I'd done something he was not expecting. Miss Whitaker, the offer is very generous. You should think carefully. I'll think on the bus, sir. The bus. To Ashford Hollow. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Miss Whitaker, please, before you go, there is one more thing you should know. I stopped at the door, turned back. He was looking at me strangely now, like he was seeing me for the first time, like the professional shell had cracked, and something human was underneath. Your aunt. She was not the kind of woman who kept secrets easily. She kept this one, but she did not want you to arrive with nothing. There is more waiting for you than you know. That was all he said. He didn't explain. He didn't clarify. He just held my eyes for a long moment, then looked back down at his desk. I walked out with the key in my pocket, and a hole in my chest where the anger used to be. Something else was filling it now. I didn't have a word for it yet, but it felt like the beginning of a question. The bus to Ashford Hollow left at 6:14 in the morning. I bought a ticket with 14 of my $283. Then I sat on a plastic bench in the depot and watched the sky turn from black to gray to that pale, hopeful blue that comes right before the sun. I didn't sleep. I had not slept properly in 3 days. Not since Sarah's couch, and even that had been more of a curled-up flinching than actual sleep. Sarah was a girl from my last group home. She had her own tiny apartment now. She was kind. She was also broke. My presence had felt like a weight on her chest, and I'd felt it too. So the bus felt easier. The driver was a heavy-set man with kind eyes. He looked at me twice when I handed him my ticket. Once at my face, once at my backpack. You alone, sweetheart? Yes, sir. You got somebody meeting you on the other end? I hesitated. Because I didn't. Not really. I had a key. A boarded-up building. A dead end I'd never met. But I couldn't say that. Yes, sir. He nodded slow, like he didn't believe me. But he let me pass anyway. The kindness of strangers is a funny thing. Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps you moving. I took a seat near the back, pressed my forehead to the cool glass, and watched the city fall away. The buildings got shorter, then further apart. Then trees started showing up between them, thin at first, then thick, then everywhere. The road climbed. The engine groaned. I could feel us going up into some other kind of country entirely. I kept my hand in my coat pocket, around the key. It was warm now, from my body, and I found myself thinking about my mother. I do not remember her face clearly. I know that sounds terrible. She died when I was 6. And when you are 6, memories are these strange watery things. They evaporate faster than you can hold on to them. But I remember her hands. She had long fingers. She used to braid my hair before school. And she used to hum. Not a song exactly. Just a low, soft hum. Always the same 3 notes, over and over, like a lullaby that never quite started. I remember the smell of her soap. Something with lemon. I remember she called me Hazelnut. That is it. That is what I have. I never knew my father. He was gone before I was born. My mother worked 2 jobs. We lived in a small apartment above a laundromat. When she died, there was no funeral. Not one I remember. There was only a woman with a clipboard and a car ride to a place with metal beds. That was the beginning of the paperwork years. Nobody came for me. That was the thing I could never understand. Even as a little kid, somebody made me. Somebody had to have known where I was. And nobody came. For 12 years, nobody came. I used to make up stories at night. In the dark. In whichever bed I was in that week. A grandmother would come for me. A grandmother in a soft coat, with warm hands. She'd knock on the door of the group home. She'd say my name. I'd stopped making up those stories by the time I was 10. You have to protect yourself somehow. But now there was a key in my pocket, and a lawyer's voice in my head, saying there was more waiting for me than I knew. And a woman named Adeline Prescott, whose name I had heard for the first time yesterday, who had left me a soda fountain and a mystery. The bus climbed higher. The sun came up over a ridge of pines, throwing gold across the valley below. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine that maybe somebody had come for me after all. Maybe I had just been too far away to hear the knock. Ashford Hollow appeared like something out of an old photograph. The bus pulled into a stop that was not really a station. Just a wooden sign and a bench and a small brick building with a hand-painted arrow pointing to a public restroom. The driver caught my eye in the mirror as I stood up. "You be careful now." "Yes, sir. Thank you." "You need anything, you call the number on your ticket, all right?" "Yes, sir." I stepped off the bus into air that smelled like pine and something sweeter. Wood smoke. Bread. Something I couldn't name, but recognized in my body somehow. Like a song, from a place I couldn't remember being. The bus pulled away, left me standing on the curb, alone, backpack on my shoulders. The town square was small, old, beautiful in a worn-down way. There was a gazebo in the center of a green, with benches around it. There was a bakery, with steam on the windows. A hardware store, with a wooden sign that said Monroe's in letters that were flaking at the edges. A post office. A church with a white steeple. A few empty storefronts, with paper on the windows. And there, in the middle of the block, sat number 142. I knew it before I saw the numbers. I knew it in my chest. The building was 2 stories of dark red brick, weathered soft by time. The front window was huge and arched, but you couldn't see through it. Somebody had boarded it up with thick plywood, grayed by years of weather. Above the door, a tattered awning hung down on one side like a broken wing. Once red and white, now the color of ash. But you could still see the letters on the window, painted in gold, once. Faded now. Elegant looping script. Adeline's Sweet Corner. I stood on the sidewalk, and I looked at it, and something in my chest cracked open. I don't know why. I don't know how a boarded-up building could do that to a person. But it did. There was something about seeing that name in gold letters. Adeline. Adeline. The name of a woman I'd never met, who had loved me, apparently, from a distance, my whole life. I felt tears rise. I pushed them down. Not here. Not on the street. Not with strangers walking by. A woman walked past, with a small brown dog. She looked at me, looked at the building, then looked at me again. Her mouth opened slightly. Then she kept walking. Fast. Which was strange. Very strange. 2 teenagers on skateboards rolled past. One of them nudged the other. They both stared at me. Kept going. I felt my face get hot. I looked like exactly what I was. A stranger with a backpack, standing outside a boarded-up building, holding a key. I was about to walk to the bakery, buy a coffee, pretend I had a plan, when the door of the hardware store next to me swung open, and an old man stepped out. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, white hair, thick and combed back. He wore a work apron, over a flannel shirt. His hands were huge, and stained with something dark. Grease, probably, or wood stain. He was maybe 70, maybe older. It was hard to tell. He had one of those faces that had lived a lot, but seemed only halfway done with the living. He saw me. He stopped. For a second, he just stared. His mouth opened, closed. His eyes did something I have only ever seen a handful of times in my life. They went wet, fast, without any warning at all. Oh, my Lord. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. You look just like her. Sir, you're Hazel. I stepped back, which is a strange reflex. But when you grow up like I did, when strangers know your name, it usually means trouble. How do you know that? He held up his hands. Slow, calming, like you would to a spooked horse. Sweetheart, my name is Silas Monroe. I run this hardware store. I knew your Aunt Adeline my whole life. And I knew your mother when she was your age. The world stopped. I mean it. Actually stopped. The birds, the wind, my pulse. You knew my mother. Honey. His voice broke. Just a little. He cleared his throat. Tried again. Honey, your mother grew up in the apartment right above that soda fountain. I taught her how to ride a bike on this street. Right here. On this sidewalk. Because I hadn't known that. Because nobody had told me that. Because I had been in the state system for 12 years, and nobody had ever mentioned that my mother came from anywhere, from anyone, from any place at all. I felt my knees try to give. Silas Monroe stepped forward, fast for a man his age, caught my elbow, steadied me. Easy, easy now. Come inside. Let me get you some water. I let him lead me. I didn't have a choice. My body wasn't listening to me anymore. Inside his store it smelled like wood and metal and coffee. There was a small wood stove in the corner. He sat me down in an old leather chair beside it. He disappeared for a moment and came back with a glass of water and a napkin. Drink. I drank. My grip on the glass would not stay steady. He pulled up a stool, sat across from me. He didn't rush. He didn't fill the silence with useless words. He just waited. Finally, I could speak. Mr. Monroe. Silas. Please. Silas. I didn't know. I know you didn't, honey. I didn't know my mother was from here. I didn't know I had an aunt. I didn't know any of this. He nodded slow. His face was doing something complicated. Sadness and anger and something else. Something almost tender. Your Aunt Adeline. He paused, rubbed his jaw. Your Aunt Adeline looked for you for the better part of 12 years, Hazel. My mouth went dry. What? She hired a lawyer. She hired a private investigator. She wrote letters. Every birthday. Every Christmas. She sent them care of the state agency. She sent them care of every group home we could get an address for. I never got any of them. I know. Why? Sweetheart, that's a longer story, and I don't think you have the strength to hear all of it today. But I can tell you one thing right now, so you know it in your bones, before another minute passes. What? He leaned forward. His eyes did not leave mine. Your cousin Marlene. Yes. She works in the law, not as a lawyer. Not exactly. A paralegal. At a firm in the city. 20 years. She knows every form there is. She knows how to get a court to name her something. Guardian ad litem. Interested party. Whatever piece of paper it takes. And she used that. Honey, she used that. To keep me away from Adeline. Yes. How? Because it looked good on paper. To the state. A woman with a career. A woman in the city. A woman with money. Your aunt was a small-town widow, with a heart condition and a soda fountain that had closed down. On paper, Marlene looked like the responsible party, even though she never wanted you. She just wanted to be the one saying no on your behalf. I sat still, very still, because in one sentence, this old man had explained 12 years of my life. The story fit. It fit the way a key fits a lock. Marlene had used the law against my aunt. Not by taking me, by making sure nobody else could either. She had put herself in the paperwork. And then she had used the paperwork to say no. 12 years. 12 birthdays without a card. 12 Christmases with a paper stocking and a state-issued candy bar. 12 years of thinking nobody in the world was thinking about me. And there had been someone. All along. There had been a woman in a small town, writing letters, hiring lawyers, calling agencies, doing everything a person could do to find a little girl. And that little girl had been reachable. She had been right there. In beds and rooms and state buildings that had addresses and phone numbers. Which meant somebody had been standing in the way. Somebody with a briefcase. And a filing system. And a signature that fit inside a legal box. I sat in that leather chair by that wood stove, and I felt something in me change. It wasn't rage. Rage is loud. This was quiet. This was the sound of a door closing on the girl I used to be, and another one opening, to someone I had not met yet. Silas. Yes, honey. I want to open the store. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. Small but real. And he stood up, took off his apron, hung it on a nail. Well then, he said, let's get you inside. The plywood came off, with a groaning, splintering protest. Silas didn't ask if I wanted help. He just went into the back of his shop and came out with a crowbar in one hand and a big pair of bolt cutters in the other. He didn't say anything. He just walked across the sidewalk and started working. I stood back and watched him. His shoulders knew what to do. His hands knew what to do. He had probably nailed those boards up himself years ago when Adeline got too sick to keep the shop open. When the plywood finally came away, there was a real door underneath. Wooden, red paint peeling in strips, a tarnished brass handle, a keyhole clogged with dust and cobwebs. Silas stepped back. That's your job, honey. I pulled the key from my pocket, warm from my body, solid in my hand. I slid it into the lock. It resisted, like it was arguing with me, like it was not sure I was the right person. I turned it harder, put my weight into it, and somewhere deep inside the door, something old and stubborn gave way with a heavy clunk. The door swung open. The air that came out of that shop was the strangest thing I have ever breathed. It was stale. It was dusty. It was full of the ghosts of 100 small smells, sugar and vanilla, and something that had once been chocolate syrup. But underneath all of it, there was something else. A trace of perfume. Soft. Sweet. Something with lemon. My mother's soap. I don't know how it could have been. It didn't make sense. But I stood in that doorway and I smelled my mother. And I felt 6 years old again. And I felt her hands in my hair. And I felt the whole shape of my life fold in on itself. Silas didn't say a word. He just stepped back. Gave me space. I walked in. The floor was black and white checkered tile, covered in a thick fuzz of dust. A long marble counter ran the length of the room. Behind it, a huge mirrored wall was clouded gray with grime. Silver soda taps rose up like the necks of tarnished swans. Tall glass jars sat empty on shelves, once filled with penny candy. A dozen red vinyl stools stood at attention along the counter, their chrome bases pitted with rust but still standing. Small round tables, wire-backed chairs, a cash register the size of a small oven, brass and ornate. Tom had stopped in that room. Someone had locked the door one afternoon 8 years ago and never come back. I walked slowly down the length of the counter, ran my fingers along the marble. The dust came away in gray streaks under my hand. Behind the counter, I found a small kitchen, even dustier, even sadder, pots hanging from a rack, wrapped in cobwebs, a stack of yellowed menus. Beside the kitchen, a tiny office, barely bigger than a closet, a wooden desk, a rotary phone, a calendar on the wall, still turned to a month 8 years past. A framed photograph on the desk, glass fogged over. I picked it up, wiped the glass with the sleeve of my coat, and I saw her, an older woman, silver hair pulled back, kind eyes. She was standing in this very shop, behind this very counter, in an apron, smiling, and on her hip, held on one arm, was a little girl, maybe 5 years old. Dark hair, a gap-toothed grin, a hand raised toward the camera in a small, delighted wave. The little girl was me. My knees gave this time. I sat down hard on the office chair, held the photograph in both hands, and I stared at that little girl, at that woman, at that smile, at that shop, at the whole other life I had never known I had. She had held me. She had held me right here. I had been to this shop before. I had been here when I was small. I don't remember it. I don't remember any of it. But my body remembers. My body knew that lemon soap. My body knew that marble counter. My body knew this whole room. I had come home. I hadn't known I had a home, but I had come home anyway. I slept in the shop that first night. There was nowhere else to go, and I couldn't bring myself to leave. Not now. Not when I'd just gotten here. Silas offered me his couch. He lived above his hardware store. His wife had passed a few years back, he told me quietly. He had a spare room. I could stay as long as I needed. I almost cried. I said no. I said thank you, but I need to be here. He understood. He came back an hour later, with a folded quilt, a pillow, a thermos of hot coffee, and a paper sack from the bakery, with 2 warm ham sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. The lady at the bakery. Nora. She sends her love. She said she'll be by tomorrow. She knows I'm here? He laughed. Small. Tired. Honey, everybody in Ashford Hollow knows you're here. By dinner time tonight, everybody in the county will know. He tipped his cap, and then he was gone. I made myself a nest behind the counter, piled the aprons I had found in the back closet, laid the quilt over them, sat down on my little bed of soft cotton and dust. I ate one of the sandwiches. It tasted like a thing a person makes for someone they care about. Salty ham, sharp mustard, bread with actual crust. Then I sat in the quiet of that dusty, silent, sleeping shop. And I let the day happen to me all over again. The check, the key, the bus, the trees, the town, the name in gold letters. Silas, my mother's soap. The photograph, Marlene. The paperwork years had a face now. She had looked for me for 12 years. I lay down, wrapped the quilt tight, watched the last of the evening light fall through the gaps in the boarded windows. Bars of dusty gold moving slow across the black and white tile. I should have been afraid. I was alone. I was in a strange building in a strange town. I was 18, and broke and holding on to the memory of a lawyer's careful voice saying, "There is more waiting for you than you know." But I wasn't afraid. I was tired. I was sad. I was so tired. But I wasn't afraid. I woke up early, stiff from the floor. Sunlight coming in gold and thick. I sat up slow, rubbed my face, tried to remember where I was. Then I did remember. And I smiled. All by myself. In the empty shop. In the morning quiet, I smiled for no one, but the dust motes drifting in the sunbeams. I stood up, stretched, started to pace. I had no plan. I had no supplies. I had less than $300 to my name. I had a mountain of dust and rust and cobwebs to fight through. I had a mystery. I had 2 cousins I had never met, who had, apparently, spent 12 years making sure I didn't know they existed. I had no idea what I was doing. But my hands knew they wanted to move. So I started with the floor. I found an old broom in the back closet. It was so dry the straw broke off in my hand. I found a mop with a petrified head. I found a bucket with a hole rusted through the bottom, which is when I laughed for the first time in months. Just a small laugh. Standing therein, that shop with a broken broom and a leaky bucket. I laughed. Because it was ridiculous. I was ridiculous. All of it was ridiculous. But it was mine. For the first time in my whole life, something was mine. I set the broken broom down. I went behind the counter, started pulling open drawers, cabinets, looking for something, anything, rags, cleaning supplies, anything I could use. I opened the drawer under the cash register. Empty. I opened the one below it. A stack of old order pads, a pen, a rubber band. I opened the one below that. Empty. I dropped to my knees, looked under the counter itself, at the base of the register, and that is when I saw it. One of the black and white floor tiles was slightly raised, just a fraction of an inch higher than the others. So subtle you would only see it if you were on your knees at exactly the right angle, at exactly the right time of morning, when the sunlight came in through the boards just right. My heart did a thing. I got down flat on my stomach. I got my fingernails under the edge of that tile. And I pulled. It came up. Underneath, in the hollow space beneath the floor, was a small green metal lockbox. I lifted it out. It was heavier than I expected. I sat down cross-legged on that dusty floor, held the box in my lap. My grip failed me twice on the latch. It was not locked. I lifted the lid. Inside, on a bed of yellowed tissue paper, was a thick stack of envelopes, tied with a faded silk ribbon. The ribbon had once been yellow. It was almost white now. On top of the stack was a single folded piece of paper. I picked it up. My fingers would not obey me properly. I unfolded it anyway. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, careful. The ink was a deep, steady blue. My dearest Hazel, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. It also means you have finally come home. I have waited for you every day for 12 years. There has not been a morning I did not think of you. There has not been a night I did not pray for you. I did not always know where you were, but I always knew who you were. You are my sister's granddaughter. You are my Ellie's little girl. You are, in every way that matters, my own. There are things I need to tell you. Things about your mother, about our family, about what happened after she died, about why you never received the letters I sent. I am sorry, sweet girl. I am so sorry it took this long to find you. I am sorry the truth had to wait for me to be gone. But you are home now, and you are stronger than you know, and you are so much more loved than anyone ever let you understand. Turn the page, my darling. Everything I could not tell you in life, I am telling you now. Your aunt, who has loved you all along. Adeline. I sat on that floor and I read that letter 3 times. The dust moved in the sunlight. The old shop breathed around me. Somewhere outside, a car passed. A bell rang on a bakery door. The world kept turning. And I held in my hands the first proof, the first real proof, that I had been loved. Ellie. My mother's name was Eleanor. Ellie for short. Nobody had called her that in front of me in a long, long time. I had almost forgotten. Adeline had remembered. I set the letter down, very carefully, on the clean corner of my quilt. I picked up the stack of envelopes, untied the ribbon. The silk was so fragile it almost fell apart in my fingers. There were 15 letters, maybe more. Each one sealed, each one addressed to me, in that same steady blue ink, in that same elegant hand. The dates went back 12 years. 12 years of birthdays, 12 years of Christmases, 12 years of a woman sitting in this shop, or in the apartment upstairs, or in some quiet room, with a window and a cup of tea, writing letters to a little girl she could not reach. Letters that had waited for me, here, under the floor, in the dark. All this time, I picked up the top envelope. My fingers still would not obey me. The postmark was recent. For months ago, the last letter she ever wrote. I turned it over in my hands, held it up to the light, and then, very slowly, I broke the seal. The last letter she ever wrote was short. My Hazel, I am tired now. The doctors have told me I will not see another winter. That is all right. I have made my peace. What I have not made peace with is you. I do not mean you. I mean the miles between us, the years, the empty birthdays. I go to my grave with only one regret in this world, and it is that I never held you as a grown woman. I never got to see the person you have become, but I know you have become someone. I know it the way I know the sun will rise, because you are Ellie's daughter, and Ellie's daughter was born strong. In this box you will find everything I have, the letters I sent, the letters that came back. Some money I saved for you. Not much. I gave what I had to the doctors, but I hid a little from your cousins. They do not know it is here. Do not tell them. And Hazel, when you find the ledger, when you read the entries in the back, you will understand. About the shop, about the trust, about what I was able to protect for you, and what I was not. Do not be angry, my love. Anger is a heavy thing to carry. Just come home. I have been waiting. Your Aunt Adeline. I sat on the floor of the shop with that letter in my lap, and I cried the kind of crying that does not make any sound. Because she'd known. She'd known she was dying, and she'd written to me anyway, even though I would never write back, even though she thought I'd chosen not to know her. She kept writing, and she called me my love. I have been called a lot of things in my life. Case number, placement, kid, foster, Miss Whitaker, Hazel Whitaker. Nobody had ever called me my love. I let myself cry until I was empty. Then I wiped my face on the sleeve of my coat, and I opened the next envelope. The next letter was from 12 years ago. The handwriting was younger, steadier. The ink was almost black. My darling Hazel, you are 6 years old today. I do not know where you are. I do not know if this letter will reach you, but I am writing it anyway, because I love you, and because someday you may want to know that. Your mother died 4 months ago. She was my niece. She was raised in my home. She was, in many ways, the daughter I was never given. She loved you so much, my sweet girl. She used to bring you here when you were little. You used to sit at the counter in a blue dress and ask me for cherry phosphates. Do you remember? Probably not. You were very small. I have tried to get you back, Hazel. I have tried every legal path there is. I have hired a lawyer. I have filed papers. But your cousin Marlene has intervened in the family court, and she has convinced the state that she is the appropriate contact. She has told them I am too ill, too old, too far away, and they have listened to her, not to me. I am telling you this so that when you are older, you will know. I did not stop trying. I never stopped. Someone in this family made sure I could not have you. But I want you to know I fought. Happy birthday, Hazelnut. Your Aunt Adeline. Hazelnut. Somebody had told her that. Somebody in that room, where my mother lay dying, had said, she calls the little one Hazelnut. And Adeline had held it, had carried it, had put it in a letter 12 years later for a girl who might never read it. I pressed the letter to my chest, sat there in the dust, rocked, just a little, just enough to keep breathing. Because I felt something in that letter that changed everything. Someone in this family made sure I could not have you. Someone in this family, not the state, not the system, not some overworked social worker with a clipboard. Someone in this family. I had a family that had made a choice about me, and that choice had cost me 12 years. The next letter was thicker, 10 pages. I did not read it. Not right then. My chest was too full. I set the letters back in the box, very gently, like they were made of something that could break. Then I picked up the ledger, because Adeline had said, when you find the ledger, when you read the entries in the back. It was a fat leather-bound book, cracked at the spine, full of my aunt's careful handwriting, columns of numbers, dates, purchases, receipts, the daily bones of a small business that had lived and worked for decades. I flipped to the back, and there, tucked between the last few pages, were 3 thick envelopes. Cash, real cash, bills and paper bands, 20s, 50s, hundreds. I counted with fingers that could not seem to remember how. For $1,260. I have never held that much money in my life. I have never even seen that much money in one place outside of a bank window. There was a note paper clipped to the top envelope. 2 sentences. Adeline's steady blue ink. Pay the back taxes at town hall. Get the pipes fixed. Nora at the bakery knows a good plumber. Start there. The rest will come. I read it 3 times. The rest will come. She had not said what the rest was, which meant the rest was something bigger than money, which meant I had a lot more reading to do. But not right this second. Right this second, I had $4,000. And a shop, and a plumbing situation, and a town, and I was going to move. Nora Bellamy came through the front door at 10 o'clock in the morning like she had been waiting for permission since sunrise. She was maybe 55, small and round in the way of a woman who spent her life around fresh bread and did not apologize for it. Her hair was a cheerful bright silver, cut short. Her cheeks were pink. Her palms were floured almost to the elbows. She was carrying a covered basket. She stopped inside the doorway, looked at me, looked at the mess of the shop, looked at me again, and she burst into tears. "Oh, sweet baby." That is what she said. First thing. "Oh, sweet baby." Then she set the basket down on the marble counter, and she crossed the room in 3 quick steps, and she wrapped me in a hug that smelled like cinnamon and vanilla and warm butter. And I stood very still because I did not know what to do with a hug like that. I did not know what to do with a hug from a stranger who was crying into my hair. "Ma'am, Nora, Nora, there you are, honey, there you are." I did not understand what she meant by that, but I did not ask, because it felt too good. She let go of me eventually, wiped her eyes with the back of a floured hand, and left a smudge on her cheek. Uncovered the basket. Inside were cinnamon rolls the size of my fist, still warm, glossy with icing. "Eat, ma'am, I eat. Then we talk." I sat on a dusty stool at the marble counter. Nora pulled another stool close and sat with me. She watched me eat like she was watching a plant get watered for the first time in a year. The cinnamon roll fell apart in my hands. Warm, sweet, real. I had not had breakfast in 3 days. I had not had breakfast made by a woman in a whole lot longer than that. "Silas called me last night," Nora said. Her voice was low. "Careful. He said Ellie's girl was here." I stopped chewing. "You knew her too." "Honey, I was 2 grades below her in school. I bought penny candy off this counter for 8 years of my childhood. Your Aunt Adeline gave me my first job. I worked here every summer in high school." She smiled at me. Watery. Steady. "Your mama was the prettiest girl in Ashford Hollow. And the kindest. And she used to sneak me extra sprinkles when your aunt was not looking." I set the cinnamon roll down. Because I could not eat and hear that at the same time. My chest was not big enough. "I'm sorry, honey. I said too much too fast." "No. Please. Say more." She reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were warm from the ovens. She had a laugh like a bell. "Your mother, Ellie Whitaker. She was going to be somebody. She could sing. She could paint. She could talk any of us out of a bad mood in about 30 seconds flat. She was the sun of this street." "What happened?" Nora looked down at her lap, sighed. "She fell in love with the wrong man, honey." I waited, because I have learned. Sometimes waiting says more than asking. "He wasn't from here. He came through town one summer. Some kind of salesman. Charming. Handsome. Wrong down to the bone. Your Aunt Adeline could see it. Everybody could see it. But Ellie was 19, and stubborn and in love." "My father." "Yes, honey. What happened to him?" "He left her when she was pregnant with you. Never saw him again. Nobody did. Your mother packed her things and moved to the city because she was ashamed. She thought coming home meant admitting she had failed. Your aunt begged her to stay. Begged her. But Ellie wouldn't. She kept saying she'd come back when she was ready. When she was on her feet." Nora's eyes were shining. "She never got back on her feet, sweetheart. And she never came home." The shop was very quiet, except for the sound of the old wall clock, which I had not even noticed until now. It was still working. Somehow. Still ticking. A steady, small heartbeat in the dust. Tick, tick, tick. "She died of pneumonia," Nora said. "Your aunt did not find out for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Hazel. Your mother lay in a hospital, and by the time Adeline learned of it, they had already put you in the system. Why did not the state call her?" "Honey, that is the thing we have all been trying to figure out for 12 years. Until Marlene told your aunt herself. About 4 years ago, she sat in your aunt's front room and admitted it, right to her face. She said she had filed papers with the family court, named herself the family contact, told the caseworkers your aunt was too ill to care for a child, And by the time your aunt tried to correct the record, the paperwork was 2 years old, and nobody would listen. Marlene had told her. Marlene had walked into my aunt's living room and confessed to it. Like it was a favor, Nora squeezed my hand. We're going to help you, honey. All of us. This town. We are going to help you. She stood up. Silas is bringing a plumber at noon. I told him you'd need one. And the electrician is coming Thursday. That is Jim Reed. He was in your mother's grade. He would not take a penny from me when I asked. He said it was for Ellie. I stared at her. I do not know these people. Sweetheart, they know you. That is how it works here. She kissed me on the top of the head. Like a grandmother. Like a mother. Like someone who had rights. She left. I sat at the counter for a long time, looking at the door she had walked through. Then I looked at the cash on the counter. Then at the letters in the box. Then at the picture of the little girl on Adeline's hip. And I started to cry again. Not sad crying. Just full crying. The kind that comes when your whole body finally understands it has been holding its breath for a very long time. And now, maybe, it can let it go. The plumber came at noon. He was a wiry man named Ray, with a gray mustache and hands like rope. He walked around the shop with a flashlight, poked things, grunted a lot, came back out from the basement with his face streaked in something I did not want to identify. Pipes are shot. Okay. Water heater is gone. Okay. Grease trap is a horror show. Okay. You got money? Some. He looked at me. Really looked. The way Silas had looked. The way Nora had looked. Like he was seeing somebody else behind me. You're Ellie's. Yes, sir. I remember your mama. He did not say anything else about that. He just turned around, walked back to his truck, came back with a clipboard, and started writing. He gave me a number when he was done. It was less than half of what it should have been. Ray, this is. Do not. Just. Do not. Ray. Miss Whitaker. Yes, sir. Your mama was kind to my sister when nobody else was. I have owed this family for 45 years. Let me pay it. His voice was rough. His eyes were on the ground. I did not argue. Because I had spent 12 years being nobody's family. And now I had a plumber who owed my dead mother a debt he had been carrying for 4.5 decades. And the debt was mine now, just because I had walked through that door. I paid Ray a deposit in cash from Adeline's envelope. He looked at the money like it was strange, held it in his hand for a second longer than he needed to. Then he tipped his cap and went to get his tools. Days ran together after that. Days of scrubbing, days of hauling, days of tearing down what could not be saved and polishing what could. Days of Silas showing up with tools I did not know how to use, and then, patiently, teaching me. Days of Nora leaving fresh bread on the counter every morning at 7. Days of strangers walking past the open door, stopping, saying, "Are you Ellie's?" Saying, "Can I help?" I said yes to everyone, because I had never been able to say yes to anything before. An old woman brought me a rag rug she had woven herself, blue and cream, to put by the door. She left it and walked away before I could even ask her name. The barber down the street came by with a hand-drawn diagram of the wiring in the wall. He had worked as an electrician's apprentice as a teenager and remembered where every switch was. The lady from the antique shop next door pulled 6 wire-back chairs out of her storage room and said her mother had bought them from Adeline in 1971, and it felt right that they come home. The whole town was giving my aunt's shop back to me, piece by piece, chair by chair, and piece by piece, they were also giving me my mother. Because everyone had a story. Ellie sat at the 3rd stool from the end. Ellie always ordered a lemon phosphate. Ellie could whistle through her teeth. Ellie once broke a glass and cried so hard your aunt gave her a whole free milkshake to calm her down. Ellie painted the sign on the front window when she was 15. Look, see the shape of the A. That is her handwriting. That is your mother's handwriting. I stood in front of the window for a long time that afternoon. I stared at the gold letters. Faded, but there. Adeline's sweet corner. The A had a curl to it. A little swoop at the bottom. My mother had made that swoop. I put my palm flat against the inside of the glass, right over the letter, and I stood there, and I let the tears come. Because I had been carrying a woman I could barely remember. For years. And now this whole town was helping me remember her. I was not doing this alone. I had never been alone. I just had not known. Ruth Callahan walked in on a Wednesday afternoon. 70 years old. Small. silver braid down her back, cardigan the color of oatmeal, a face that had lived a great deal and been surprised by very little of it. She stopped just inside the door. She looked around. She looked at me, and her eyes filled up. But she did not cry. Ruth was not a woman who cried in doorways. She was a woman who nodded slow and set her purse down on the counter and put her hands on her hips and said, "Sweetheart, you have your mother's chin." That was how she introduced herself. I did not know what to say. "Ruth Callahan," she said. "I was your mother's best friend from the time we were 4 years old, and I have been waiting for you to come home for a long time." She walked over. She took my face in both her hands. She looked at me for a long second. Then she kissed my forehead. "There you are," she said. Very soft. "There you are, sweet girl." Something in me came undone. I do not know how else to describe it. There is a knot in the middle of a foster kid. A knot you do not know you are carrying. Until somebody looks at you like that. Somebody who knew your mother. Somebody who remembers what you might have been. The knot did not vanish. It just loosened a little. Enough for me to breathe. I sat down on a stool. Ruth sat down beside me. She did not ask me any questions. She did not make me perform. She just sat there. Told me about my mother. Ellie loved winter. Ellie hated cold. Ellie could ride a horse by the time she was 7. Ellie once tried to run away with the traveling fair. Ellie got a splinter in her thumb when she was 10 and cried so loud your aunt could hear her from 3 blocks away. Ellie used to hum 3 notes over and over. Nobody knew where the tune came from. I set my head down on the marble counter. I made a sound. Small. Involuntary. Because I knew the tune. I had heard it my whole childhood. In dreams. On the edge of sleep. In the space between waking and waking. My mother had hummed it to me. Ruth had heard it 60 years ago from her friend Ellie. And now she was here, handing it back to me. She let me cry. She did not touch me. She did not shush me. She just sat with me, in the way old women sit. Steady. Present. Nothing to prove. When I sat up, she was smiling. Watery. Fierce. "Honey. Yes, ma'am. Whatever you need. From now on. You have got me." I nodded. I could not speak. "And I'll tell you something else, Hazel Whitaker." "Yes, ma'am. That cousin of yours. The tall one. The paralegal. Marlene. She is going to show up here. Soon. And she is going to try to sweet-talk you. And bully you. And use fancy words at you. Because that is what Marlene does. That is what she has always done." "I know." Ruth looked me in the eye. "You are not alone in that fight, sweetheart. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am. When she comes, you call me." "I will. You call all of us." "I will." She patted my hand, stood up, straightened her cardigan. She walked to the door, turned back. "Hazel." "Yes. Your mother would be so proud of you. My whole life I never met a person as proud as she would be of you right now." She walked out. I sat at the counter for a long time. I did not cry. I did not move. I just sat there, and I let it sink in, word by word. Your mother would be so proud of you. I had never heard that sentence in 18 years from anyone. I let it live in my chest for as long as I could. The call came on a Tuesday. I was up on a stepladder, wiping down the big mirror behind the counter. The dust came off in dark streaks and left the glass shining behind it. I was starting to be able to see my face in it, which was strange, because I was starting to see other faces in there too. My mother's face, my aunt's face, faces I had never known and was only just meeting through the eyes of other people. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but I did. "Hello, Miss Whitaker." Male. Smooth. Careful. The kind of voice that has been trained. "Yes. This is Damien Cole. Ridgeline Development. I hope I am not catching you at a bad time." Because he was catching me at exactly the time he wanted to catch me at, and we both knew it. "Mr. Cole." "Please." "Damien." "Mr. Cole." A small pause. He heard it. He was good at his job. He recovered fast. "Miss Whitaker, I am calling because I understand there has been some hesitation on your end regarding the offer we made for the property at 142 Main Street. I wanted to reach out personally to make sure you had every opportunity to consider it." "There is no hesitation. I am sorry. There is no hesitation. The answer is no. The property is not for sale." The pause was longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was still smooth, but something had changed underneath it. Something you could only hear If you had spent your whole life listening for the change under people's voices. I had. Miss Whitaker, I want to be sure you understand the scope of the offer. Your cousins have made it very clear that they consider this a fair settlement. And the number is quite generous. I am authorized to go higher. Mr. Cole. Yes. Do you know what my cousins did to me? Silence. I had not planned to say that. It just came out. My grip tightened on the phone. I am not sure I follow, Miss Whitaker. Then let me help you. I met my Aunt Adeline for the first time last week. In a lawyer's office. She was already dead. I met her through paperwork. Because for 12 years, my cousin Marlene made sure I did not know she existed. Filed papers with the state. Made herself the family contact. Used every legal trick she knew to keep a dying woman away from a little girl. So you can tell my cousins, from me, Mr. Cole. I do not care what they consider fair. I do not care what number you name. The shop is not for sale. It will never be for sale. Have I made myself clear? I hung up. My whole body was buzzing. I sat down on a stool, because my knees would not hold me. And I stared at the phone, and I waited to feel sorry. I did not feel sorry. I felt tall. For the first time in my whole life, I felt tall. The rag in my hand was still wet. I looked down at it, then up at the mirror. My face in the mirror was strange to me. Flushed, bright, fierce. I did not know that girl, but I liked her. I liked her a lot. Marlene showed up 3 days later. I should have known she would come. Damian Cole would have called her the second I hung up. And she would have gotten in her car. I should have known, but I did not. She walked through the door at 4:15. The bell above the door made its little chime. And in walked a woman. Not just any woman. A tall, thin, expensive woman. She was maybe 38. Her hair was the color of a copper penny, done in a smooth, blunt cut that ended right at her jaw. She was wearing a coat that cost as much as my rent for a year, if I had rent. Her earrings were small and gold. Her heels were low and gleaming. Her handbag matched everything. She stopped inside the doorway. She looked around. She let her eyes travel over the shop, over me, and she smiled. The smile was the worst part, because I recognized it. I had seen that smile on social workers, on foster mothers, on principals. It was the smile people put on right before they took something from you. Hazel. Marlene. She tilted her head, approving, like a woman who had trained a difficult dog and was pleased it remembered its name. You look just like her. Like who? Aunt Adeline, when she was young. Which was a lie, because Silas had told me a dozen times I looked like my mother, and Marlene had known my mother, and Marlene was choosing not to say her name. I filed it away, in the back of my head, where I kept everything now. Can I help you, Marlene? You can offer me a seat, sweetheart. She said sweetheart like it was an insult she was hoping I'd miss. I gestured to a stool. She looked at the vinyl, considered her coat, pulled a silk scarf from her handbag, and draped it delicately across the seat before she sat. She crossed her legs, folded her hands. She studied me the way a jeweler studies a stone she is about to buy cheap. I came all this way to see you, Hazel. You did. I was worried. About what? About you. A girl your age. Alone in a strange town. In a run-down building. It is not safe, sweetheart. And it is not sustainable. She reached into her handbag, pulled out a folder, slid it across the marble counter toward me. Ridgeline has come back with a much better offer. As executor, I have been negotiating on your behalf. This is what I have secured. She uncapped a silver pen, set it on top of the folder. Delicate, almost bored. Sign at the tab, sweetheart. And this can be over. You can have a fresh start. A real one. Not this. She gestured around the shop. At the dust, I had not finished cleaning. At the counter, I had polished until my hands cramped. At the mirror, I had made shine. This. She meant it like it was a dirty word. I looked at the folder. I looked at the pen. I looked at her. Something in me went very quiet. Marlene. Yes, sweetheart. Would you like a lemon phosphate? She blinked. A what? A lemon phosphate. It was my mother's favorite. Nora taught me the recipe. I have been practicing. The color left her face. Just a shade. Just enough. I am not here for refreshments, Hazel. No. I know why you are here. Her jaw tightened. Just slightly. Then let us stop wasting time. Sign the paper. Go start your life. Do you have any idea what this money could do for a girl in your position? Do you have any idea what it means to have a cushion, a real cushion, when you have nothing? I have some idea. Then sign. No. She stared at me. The bell above the door chimed. A soft, cheerful sound. Ruth Callahan walked in. 70 years old. Small, bright-eyed, silver braid down her back. She was carrying a covered dish. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Marlene. Her face changed. I had never seen a woman that age make a face like that. It was not angry. It was worse. It was a face that remembered. Marlene Prescott. Marlene turned slow on her stool. Ruth, you have got some nerve. I do not believe I asked for your commentary, Ruth. You did not have to ask, dear. Ruth walked past her, right past her, as if she were not there. Set the covered dish on the counter. Kissed me on the cheek. Turned back to Marlene. Ellie was my best friend from the time we were 4 years old. And when she died, this town waited for her little girl to come home. For 12 years, we waited. Do you know what we thought, Marlene? We thought Hazel did not want us. We thought she had chosen not to know us. Because that is what you told your mother. That is what you told the lawyer. That is what you let this whole town believe. Marlene stood up, very slowly. Ruth, this is a family matter. You lost the right to that word, honey. The shop was completely silent. Marlene picked up her scarf, folded it, placed it back in her handbag, movement by movement. Slow, controlled. Then she turned to me. You have no idea what you are doing. I have some idea. You will fail, Hazel. In 6 months. In a year. You will be right back where you started. And the offer will not be on the table anymore. Then it will not. She looked at me a long moment. And something happened in her face. Something almost human. A flicker. Fast, and then gone. For a second, I thought she might say something else. Something real. But she did not. She picked up her handbag, turned, walked out. The bell chimed. The door closed. Ruth let out a breath I do not think she had been breathing all afternoon. Well, she sat down on the stool Marlene had just left, adjusted the scarf that was still there, sighed like a woman who had waited 12 years to do exactly what she had just done. Honey. Yes, ma'am. Come sit. I came. She took my hands in hers. Small hands. Papery. Warm. Fingers that had held my mother's hand in the 3rd grade. Fingers that had braided my mother's hair at a sleepover in 1974. You did good. Ma'am. You did real good. I did not cry. But my chin did that thing. That thing chins do when they are trying not to. Ruth saw it. She squeezed my hands. Your mother would have laughed. Would she? Oh, sweetheart. Ellie would have laughed so hard. She always said Marlene was born looking down her nose. And Ellie would have looked at what you just did, and she would have picked you up, and she would have spun you around this shop, and she would have laughed. I closed my eyes. Because for the first time in years, I could almost hear it. A laugh like a bell. I could almost hear my mother laughing. That night, I found the diary. I had been going through the back office, a little at a time, emptying drawers, sorting papers. Adeline had saved everything. Old receipts, vendor invoices, Christmas cards from 1987, every piece of paper that had ever passed through her hands. She had loved this life. You could feel it in the way she had kept it. I was sitting on the floor with a stack of ledgers when I noticed the wall. Behind the desk, a small square patch of wallpaper. The pattern did not match. It was close, but not exact, like someone had cut a hole in the wall, and then papered over it, and then done it fast. My heart did the thing. I got up. I got a paring knife from the kitchen. I peeled back the paper. Behind the paper was a small square of drywall, cut cleanly, fitted back into place, with a bead of caulk gone hard. I worked the piece loose with the knife. It came free in my hand. Inside the cavity was a leather book, small, softened at the corners, wrapped in a piece of blue cotton. I lifted it out. My fingers had not obeyed me for 2 weeks straight now. They still would not. I unwrapped the cotton. The book was a diary. The name inside the cover, in faded pencil, was Eleanor Whitaker. My mother's diary. I sat down on the floor of the office because my legs would not hold me. I opened the book to a random page. My mother's handwriting. Round. Careful. 19 years old. Aunt Adeline says he is not good for me. But she does not understand. Nobody understands. He looks at me like I am the only person in the world. I turned the page. Skipped ahead. My fingers picked pages at random. Annie says come home. I cannot come home. Not like this. Not yet. Baby moved today. Just a flutter. I cried. She was born at 4:17 a.m. She has my mouth. She has his eyes. God help me. I love her more than my own life. Hazelnut is what I call her, because she is small and brown-eyed and perfect, and I could crack her in two hands if I was not so careful. I could not read anymore for a moment. I had to stop. I pressed the book to my chest, and I breathed very slow. Then I turned to the last entry. My mother's handwriting had gotten smaller, weaker. She had been sick. She was writing from a bed, I could tell. The pencil trembled. If anything happens to me, someone must find my Aunt Adeline Prescott in Ashford Hollow. She will take Hazel. She has promised me, since the day my baby was born. Adeline is her family. Adeline is her home. Do not let anyone tell you different. Do not let Marlene near her. I know what she is. I know what she has done to Aunt A. Marlene is not to be trusted with my child. Do you hear me? If you find this, do you hear me? The next line was underlined, so hard the pencil had torn through the paper. Take my Hazel home to Adeline. I could not breathe. I could not breathe. I sat on the floor of the office of my aunt's soda fountain, and I read those words, and I understood. My mother had known. My mother had begged. My mother, dying in a hospital bed 12 years ago, had written it down. In her own hand. On paper. Where anyone could find it. Someone had found it. Someone had read it. And someone had made sure it never left that room. Someone had made sure Aunt Adeline never got the message. And Hazel never got the aunt. And the aunt never got the child. And the child grew up in the paperwork years, thinking nobody in the world had ever wanted her. Somebody had done that. On purpose. For years. I did not cry. The crying stage was over. Something else was starting now. Something quieter. Something clearer. Something with a spine. I closed my mother's diary. Very carefully. I wrapped it back in the blue cotton. I held it against my chest. I stood up. Walked out of the office. Into the shop. The lights were low. The mirror behind the counter caught my reflection. The girl in the mirror looked older than the girl who had walked into this shop 3 weeks ago. Not by years. By something else. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said out loud, in the dark, empty shop, to my mother, to my aunt, to the little girl I had been. I am going to tell them. I am going to tell them everything. And then I am going to open this shop. The mirror did not answer. But it did not need to. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Old buildings do that. Settle at night. Like they are remembering. I let it creak. I turned off the light. And I went to sleep on my quilt behind the counter for the last time. Because tomorrow, everything was going to change. I did not sleep much that night. I did not need to. There is a kind of quiet that comes after you have finally heard the truth. It settles over you like a coat. Heavier than sleep. Warmer than anger. It just holds you. I lay on my quilt behind the counter. Held my mother's diary against my chest. Watched the moonlight move across the black and white tile. Slow. Careful. Like it was walking around me on tiptoe. At some point, I stopped watching. And when I opened my eyes, the sun was up. I got up. I washed my face in the little kitchen sink. I braided my hair. I put on the cleanest shirt in my backpack. And I called the lawyer. Thaddeus Grant answered on the second ring. Miss Whitaker. Mr. Grant. I need to see you today. In Ashford Hollow. A pause. I can drive up this afternoon. Thank you. Miss Whitaker. Yes, sir. Is everything all right? I looked at the shop. At the sunlight coming. Through the front window, I had scrubbed clean. At the mirror I had polished. At the counter my mother had once leaned on. Yes, sir. Everything is going to be. He was there by 3. He walked into the shop in his careful gray suit, and he stopped. Just stopped. Right inside the door. His face did the thing that all their faces did when they walked in for the first time. That soft opening. Like they had not expected the ghost to look this alive. He set his briefcase on the counter. Slow. Miss Whitaker. Sir. You have done extraordinary work here. I have had help. He nodded. Once. Like he was giving credit where it was due. I put a folded piece of blue cotton on the counter between us. His eyes went to it. Then back to me. What is this? My mother's diary. He did not touch it. He knew what it was without touching it. Sit down, sir. He sat. I sat across from him. 2 stools. Marble between us. The mirror behind me. His face in the mirror looked older than his face across from me. Mr. Grant. Yes. How long have you known? He took a breath. Held it. Let it out. Miss Whitaker. How long? I have been Adeline's lawyer for 31 years. So you knew? I knew what she told me. And what she told you was that she was trying to find you. That her letters were coming back. That she suspected her elder daughter of interfering. That her elder daughter had used her position as a paralegal to file papers, with the state naming herself the family contact. That every request Adeline made was routed through Marlene first, and that Marlene said no to every single one. You could have said something. I could not, Miss Whitaker. Why? Because your aunt could not prove it. Not in a court. Not without more than she had. And by the time she found out how deep it went, she was too sick to fight. She asked me to save what I could. The trust. The shop. The lots. She asked me to save the paper. Because the paper was the only thing Marlene could not touch. I looked at him. He held my eyes. And for a professional man in a gray suit, he did something I did not expect. He said, I am so sorry, Hazel. Not Miss Whitaker. Hazel. The first time he had ever called me by my given name. And the way he said it, like a man who had watched a woman he respected die in slow, careful stages. Like a man who had held a secret for years because his profession told him to, and regretted it every night. I let him sit with it a moment. Because I understood. I had been in enough rooms with grown men in suits who could not fix what was in front of them. I understood the shape of that face. Mr. Grant. Yes. I need you to help me now. He nodded. Quick. Like a man who had been waiting to be asked. Anything. I unwrapped the blue cotton. Opened the diary to the last page. Turned it around. Slid it across the counter. Read this. He read. His face did not change. That was the thing about Thaddeus Grant. His face did not change. But his hands did. They gripped the edge of the marble very hard. When he finished, he looked up at me. This is her handwriting. Yes, sir. Your mother's. Yes, sir. Can you prove it? There is more of it in the office. Notebooks. Letters she wrote as a teenager. And Adeline saved everything. Then we have handwriting samples. Yes, sir. Miss Whitaker. Yes. This changes things. I know. He closed the diary, wrapped it back in the cotton, slid it toward me. Very careful, like a priest handing back a relic. What do you want? I want them to come here. Both of them. Both of them. Marlene will not come easily. She will come. If Sloane comes. She will not let Sloane come alone. He looked at me a long moment. You have thought about this. For 3 days. And what do you want to happen when they get here? I thought about it. I had thought about it for 3 days. I do not want a lawsuit. He blinked. Miss Whitaker. I do not. You have grounds for a very significant one. I know. You could recover damages. I know. You could put Marlene in a very difficult position, legally. Interference with a family court petition. Fraud upon the court. It would ruin her career. I know. He waited. Then what? I looked at him. At his careful gray face. At the man who had carried the shape of my aunt's grief for 31 years. I want them to hear it. Out loud. In front of the people who loved my mother. I want Marlene to sit on a stool at this counter and hear my mother's own voice from her own diary and know that everyone knows. Everyone in Ashford Hollow knows what she did. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then, very slow, he said, that is not a legal remedy. No, sir. That is something else. Yes, sir. What do you call it? I thought about it. I call it the truth, sir. He nodded. Once. Slow. Like a man who had spent his life in courtrooms and had just been reminded that courtrooms were not the only place a person could be held to account. All right, Miss Whitaker. All right. All right. Let me make the call. Marlene arrived on Saturday afternoon. She came in her long coat, her small gold earrings, her low, gleaming heels. She came with a leather portfolio under one arm, prepared for a fight. Sloane arrived beside her. I had never seen Sloane before. She was 34, softer than Marlene, rounder, not fat, just softer, hair the same copper color, but longer, loose down her back, a face that had once been very pretty and was now just tired. She wore jeans, a simple sweater, a watch that had belonged to somebody's mother. She would not meet my eyes, which told me everything I needed to know, because Marlene walked in like a woman who had come to win. Sloane walked in like a woman who had come to be dragged. Thaddeus met them at the door. He was in his gray suit. He looked, for the first time since I had known him, calm. Marlene. Sloane. Thank you for coming. You said this was urgent, Thaddeus. It is. Then let us do this and go. He gestured them in. The shop was set up. I had prepared it that morning. Silas had helped me push tables to the sides. Nora had brought coffee in a big silver urn. Ruth had come at 10 and had not left. She sat now, at the far end of the counter, in her cardigan, hands folded. Silas beside her. Nora across the room. A few others. Mrs. Delacroix from the antique shop. Ray the plumber. Jim Reed the electrician. Half a dozen people from town. Marlene stopped in the doorway. She saw the room. She saw the audience. Her face went perfectly still. Thaddeus. What is this? Please sit down, Marlene. What is this? Sit. He said it very quiet. She sat. Sloane sat beside her. Small. Folded in on herself. Hands in her lap. I stood behind the counter. In my mother's old apron, which Silas had found in the back closet and washed and pressed. It was a soft yellow. A little faded. Perfect. I did not shake. That is the part one remember most. I did not shake. I had spent my whole life shaking in rooms with grown-ups. And now I stood at my mother's counter, and I did not shake. Marlene. Sloane. Hazel. Thank you for coming. Cut the pleasantries. All right. I placed the diary on the counter. In its blue cotton. Between us. Marlene looked at it. Did not know what it was. What is that? You will see. Hazel. If this is theater. If this is some kind of stunt. I will walk out of here right now. Then walk. She did not walk. Because part of her knew. Part of her had known, from the moment she walked in the door. I unwrapped the diary. Opened it to the marked page. Turned it around. Slid it across the counter to her. Read this. I am not going to read anything. Read it. Or I will read it. Out loud. Your choice. Sloane made a small sound. Like a bird that had been stepped on. Marlene looked at the page. She did not pick it up. But her eyes went to it. I watched her read. I watched her face. The color left in 3 stages. First her lips. Then her jaw. Then everything. She sat back. Very slowly. This is a forgery. No, ma'am. This is a forgery, Hazel, and I will not. Marlene. I will not sit here while. Marlene. She stopped. Ruth was standing. Ruth, 70 years old, in her cardigan, with her hands folded, was standing behind Marlene. Ruth had crossed the room, without any of us noticing. Ruth put one small, papery hand on Marlene's shoulder. Marlene flinched. You loved her too, once, honey. Ruth's voice was so gentle it hurt to hear. Ellie was your cousin. She sat next to you in this shop, when you were both little. She was in your wedding. Do you remember that? She wore that lavender dress. She sang at the reception. I was there. I saw it. Marlene's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You loved her, Marlene. And then something in you turned. And you let a little girl grow up alone. Because you were afraid of what a piece of paper might say. About who owned this shop. About who owned the house. About who owned your mother's love. That is not. Sit with it, honey. That is not. Sit with it. Ruth kept her hand on Marlene's shoulder. Marlene did not shrug it off. She could not. Something in the room had settled. Something in the air was very still. Even the wall clock, which had ticked its steady beat all week, seemed to hold its breath. Sloane made another small sound. I looked at her. Sloane. Hazel. Look at me. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet. And I knew then. I knew because I had spent 12 years being small. And I could recognize a small person when I saw one. And Sloane was small. Was, and had been, and probably always would be. She was small in the way that some people are made small before they even get a chance. Sloane. Say it. Whatever you have to say, say it now. She looked at Marlene. She looked at me. She looked at Ruth. Then she reached into her handbag. Slow. And she pulled out a rubber-banded stack of envelopes. She set them on the counter. 15 of them. Maybe more. Every one addressed to me. Every one in Adeline's steady blue ink. Every one unopened. The room made no sound. None. Sloane's voice was so small I had to lean forward. She told me to burn them. I did not answer. She told me every year, when they came back. She told me to burn them. So Mama would not find out they had been returned. So Mama would think you were reading them. You did not burn them. No. Why? She looked up at me. For the first time. Really looked. Her eyes were the same color as mine. Which I had not noticed before. I had not known cousins could look like that. I had not had cousins. Because I did not have the heart to. The whole room made a sound. A collective breath. In. And out. Marlene turned on her sister. You. Yes. You kept them. Yes. You kept them, and you never. Never. Sloane. Marlene. I am done. Sloane's voice broke. But she did not stop. I am done. I have been done for years. And I could not say it. I could not say it, because you were older, and I was scared, and Mama was sick, and I told myself it was too late anyway. But it was not. It was not. She was in a group home 3 hours from us. She was there the whole time. I looked her up. I looked her up when I was 28, and I found her file, and I saw a picture, and she had our eyes. Our eyes, Marlene. Sloane. I did nothing. I looked at her picture, and I did nothing. Because I was afraid of you. The room had turned into something else. It was not a shop anymore. It was a court. It was a church. It was a room where the truth had finally been allowed to sit down at the counter. Marlene stood up. She stood up like a woman who had rehearsed leaving a room for years. Every muscle knew what to do, but she did not walk out. She stood there, with her leather portfolio, with her small gold earrings, with her expensive coat. And she looked at me. Hazel. Yes. What do you want? Her voice was different. Not smaller. Not softer. Just. Done. I looked at her. The moment stretched. Because I had planned to say a lot of things. I had rehearsed them for 3 days. I had a whole list. About what she had cost me. About what she had taken. About the birthdays and the bunk beds and the paperwork years. But standing in my mother's shop, in my aunt's apron, with a whole town holding its breath around me, I found I did not want the list anymore. I wanted something else. Marlene. Yes. You are going to sign a paper Mr. Grant has already drafted. What paper? A paper that says you renounce any claim to my mother's memory. To the shop. To the trust. To the letters you never let me have. To anything my Aunt Adeline left me. To anything my mother left me. Everything. And you are going to withdraw the family court filing that made you the state contact. In writing. Today. That is it. That is it. You do not want money. No. You do not want to sue. No. You do not want anything from me. No, ma'am. I do not. She looked at me. For a long time. She looked at me the way a woman looks at a person she has misjudged, so profoundly that the misjudging has cost her everything. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened. Hazel. Yes. I do not know if I can. Can what? Say I am sorry. I looked at her, and I understood something. Right then, standing behind that counter, that the sorry I might have wanted from her, the one I had wanted at 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 and 15 and 18, that sorry did not exist. It had never existed. Marlene did not have it in her. She never had, and I could not force it into her. And it did not matter. Because I did not need it anymore. I did not need Marlene to be sorry for me to be free. That was the thing my Aunt Adeline had left me, in her final letter, that I had not fully understood until this moment, standing in my mother's shop, with my mother's diary in my hand. You do not need to forgive to be free. You only need to know you were always worthy of being loved. I set my hands flat on the marble counter. Marlene. Yes. I am not asking you to be sorry. You are not. No. I am asking you to sign the paper. She looked down. At her hands. At her polished nails. She sat back down. Very slow. She reached into her leather portfolio. Pulled out her silver pen. Thaddeus slid the paper across the counter. She signed. She did not read it. She just signed. Every line. Every place he pointed. Her hand shook only once. On the last signature. When she was done, she stood up. She capped her pen. She put it in her handbag. She lifted her chin. Goodbye, Hazel. Goodbye, Marlene. She walked out. The bell chimed. The door closed. She did not look back. She was never going to. And that was all right. That was, in fact, exactly right. Sloane stayed. She stayed for 2 days. She did not ask. She did not offer. She just did not leave. She got a room at the little inn at the end of Main Street. She came at 7 in the morning with 2 coffees from the bakery. She helped me carry 100 pounds of old menus out to the dumpster. She helped me polish the silver soda taps until they shone. She did not talk much. Neither did I. But at the end of the second day, we were sitting on 2 stools at the counter, splitting a cinnamon roll from Nora, and Sloane said, "She was pretty, wasn't she?" "Who?" "Your mother." "So they tell me. I remember her a little." "Do you?" "She used to babysit me when I was 6. She let me have chocolate before dinner. She told me I had beautiful hair." "Sloane." "Yes. You can come back sometime." She looked at me. Can I? Yes. But not soon. Not for a while. When it feels right. How will I know? You will know. She nodded. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She left the next morning on the first bus. I have not seen her since. But I have received one letter. Every Christmas. Since. In her small round handwriting. Not asking anything. Just saying, I hope the shop is well. I hope you are well. I am still working on myself. Sloane. I write back every year. I am well. The shop is well. Take your time. Hazel. That is all I owe her. And that is all she asks. Some families are rebuilt slowly. Some are rebuilt letter by letter. Some are only rebuilt in one direction at a time. That is all right. Damien Cole called back a week later. I let it go to voicemail. He called again the next day. I let it go to voicemail. He called a third time on a Friday. And this time I picked up. He had done his homework this time. I could hear it in the first 10 seconds. Miss Whitaker. Mr. Cole. I want to be very clear. Ridgeline has no interest in properties tied to complicated family disputes. And frankly, I owe you an apology. When we first spoke, I did not know the full picture. I do now. Do you? Yes, ma'am. Your cousin Marlene misrepresented her authority to us. That is not something we take lightly. Our legal team is unwinding her signature on the executor documents as we speak. I did not answer right away. He waited. He had learned, I think, that with me, waiting worked better than talking. Why are you calling, then? Because we are still interested in Ashford Hollow. And I am aware that in addition to the shop, you now hold title to several other parcels. Because Thaddeus had told me, 2 days after Marlene signed. He had sat me down at this same counter, and he had opened a folder, and he had shown me. Adeline had, over the years, quietly acquired 3 small lots on Main Street. All of them held in a separate trust in my name. All of them, like the shop, untouched by the estate, untouched by Marlene, untouched by anyone. I had cried when he showed me the deeds. I did not know why. I understood now. She had spent the last years of her life making sure I had a foothold. In a town I did not know I had. In a life she prayed I would come back to. Not just the shop. A whole street. A whole beginning. I looked at the phone in my hand. Mr. Cole. Yes. I will meet with you. On my terms. Miss Whitaker. I am at your disposal. Come to the shop next Tuesday, 10 in the morning, and bring your best offer. Not for a sale. For a partnership. Silence. Then, careful. A partnership. Yes, sir. The shop is not for sale. It will never be for sale. But those other lots. We might have something to discuss. I did not tell him my terms. Not on the phone. I told him on Tuesday. In the shop, with Silas and Thaddeus at the counter beside me, in front of a small stack of Nora's pastries and 3 coffees. My terms were these. The soda fountain would never be touched. Any development on the other lots would prioritize local tenants. Small shops. Family businesses. Rent kept low for the first 5 years. No chain stores. Ever. 20% of the net revenue would go into a trust to fund scholarships for kids in the state system. Any kid, any state. Adeline Prescott scholarships. Named for her. Damien Cole listened. He was quiet a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different. Miss Whitaker, those are unusual terms. Yes, sir. They will cut into our margins. Yes, sir. Ridgeline will need to consider. Then consider. He looked at me. Really looked. For the first time. And I saw, in his tired businessman's eyes, something almost like respect. I will bring these back to my partners. Thank you. He came back 3 days later with a signed agreement. Not all my terms. Most of them. He fought me on the 20%. We settled on 15. He fought me on the chain store clause. We settled on a 10-year window. I signed. He shook my hand. He said, your aunt would have liked you, Miss Whitaker. And I said, I know, sir. I know. The reopening was on a Saturday in September. The morning of, I could not eat. Silas had said I would not be able to. He had brought me a thermos of soup anyway, and made me drink half of it, and stood over me, until I did. Nora had brought a plate of tiny pastries, and set them on the counter. Ruth had brought a small pot of white daisies. Set them on the corner table. My mother's corner table. The town started arriving at 10. They came slow, in their Sunday clothes. A little shy. As if the shop had been holding its breath for 8 years, and now, on the day it was about to breathe again, they did not want to break the spell. They filed in. They looked at the walls I had painted a soft, sunny yellow. At the mirror behind the counter, gleaming. At the red vinyl on the re-upholstered stools. At the marble I had polished until it shone. At the checkered floor I had scrubbed on my hands and knees until my knuckles bled. They looked at me, in my mother's apron, standing behind my aunt's counter, and they clapped. Silas cleared his throat and cut a red ribbon Nora had stretched across the doorway. Everybody came in. I made lemon phosphates, cherry sodas, vanilla milkshakes. Nora's cinnamon rolls sold out by noon. Ruth sat at the far end of the counter and told stories about my mother to anyone who would listen, and everybody would listen. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, in a blue dress, climbed onto a stool at the counter and asked me for a cherry phosphate, just like my mother had done, at the same age, in the same shop, on the same stool. I could not speak for a moment. I made her the phosphate. I set it in front of her. She took a sip. She made a face. Then she smiled a big gap-toothed smile. It is fizzy. Yes, honey. I like it. Good. Her mother, standing behind her, mouthed thank you at me. I nodded. I did not trust my voice. Because I had been that little girl. Once. On this stool. And nobody had told me. For 12 years. And here she was. Coming through the door. Ordering the same drink. Making the same face. On the day the shop reopened. The universe is not always cruel. Sometimes it lets you see the circle close. The last of the guests left at 10 that night. Silas stayed to help me sweep. I made him stop. I sent him home. He put his hand on my shoulder in the doorway. Held it there for a second. Kissed the top of my head like a grandfather. Your mama. Yes. Your mama is proud, honey. I know. He left. I locked the door. I turned off the front lights. I stood in the middle of the shop, in the dim glow of the back bar mirror, and I let the quiet settle around me. I had one thing left to do. I walked behind the counter, reached under the register, where I had put it that morning, in its blue cotton. The last letter, the one I had not opened, the one I had left, sealed, at the bottom of the box. Because I had been waiting, for the right moment. I sat down on my mother's corner stool, under the small pot of white daisies. I unfolded the letter. My fingers were still. For the first time in weeks, my fingers were still. My Hazel, if you are reading this, you have come home. And you have made a life. And you have chosen it, over money, over ease, over the many small doors this world will offer to lead you away from yourself. I want you to hear 3 things, my darling girl. Only 3. 1. You do not need to forgive anyone to be free. You only need to know, in the deep bones of you, that you were always, always, worthy of being loved. That is where freedom lives. Not in forgiveness. In knowing. 2. Family is not who shares your blood. Family is who stays. Who shows up. Who sweeps your floor when you cannot lift the broom. Who tells you your mother's laugh sounded like a bell. Who saves the cinnamon roll for you. Who calls you hazelnut when nobody else remembers. That is your family. Choose them. Choose them again every day. 3. The shop is not a gift. It never was. It was a promise. Your mother and I made it when you were 3 days old. That whatever happened, wherever the world took you, there would always be a room somewhere, with a light on, and a stool at a counter, and a name in gold on a window. Waiting. You are the light I left on, my love. Now go be one for someone else. Live sweet, Hazel. Like the shop. Like your mother. Like me, when I could. I love you. And Adeline. I sat on the stool. I read it twice. 3 times. Then I folded it. Slow. Careful. I pressed it flat, with the palm of my hand. I stood up. I walked to the front of the shop. I looked out the window at Main Street. Dark. Quiet. A single street lamp at the corner. A porch light on somewhere down the block. Silas had installed a new neon sign that afternoon. Just before the reopening, he had unveiled it, with a small speech I had not been able to bear listening to. It had my aunt's script, and under it, a second line, in the same hand. Adeline's and Hazel's sweet corner. The switch was under the counter. I flipped it. The sign came to life. Soft. Rose-colored. A warm, steady glow. It fell across the sidewalk. Across the empty street. Across the sleeping town. I stood at the window a long time, watching the light lay itself down on the pavement. Watching my name, glowing in cursive, next to hers. And I thought, for 12 years, I had believed I was nobody's daughter. For 12 years, I had believed no light was on for me anywhere in the world. I had been wrong. There had always been a light. I had just needed to walk far enough into the dark to find it. I put my hand against the glass. I said, quiet, only to the empty room, and the woman, who could not hear me, and the mother, whose diary was upstairs on the shelf. I am home. And the shop, in its old, brave, patient way. The shop breathed back, and I turned off the last light, and I locked the door, and I went upstairs, to the small apartment where my mother had grown up, where my aunt had waited for me for years, where the bed was made, where the light was on, where I finally laid down my head and slept.